my favorite guest, and I think he knows that, and I can say that because I'm sitting in my husband's chair. And can you tell somebody in a national studio audience that you've got a crush on somebody if they're sitting on the set next to you, or is that just weird? Poor Rich, here we are, and Jerry West joins me right now here on the Rich Eisen Show. And Jerry, I don't take it for granted that you are willing to come down to the studio and sit with us and spend time with us. So thank you again for doing that.
Well, I appreciate it, Suzy. Obviously, I've known you forever, and also Rich, not as well as I have known you, but it's a pleasure to be here today. I know you have a great show, and I watch it myself sometimes.
Well, I appreciate that, Jerry. It means a lot to us. Let's talk about the state of the National Basketball Association. Let's talk about the NBA. What is the state of it right now?
Well, Suzy, to me, from a distance, I've watched this league for so many years, from the time I started my career here as a player in Los Angeles to being involved with the Lakers for so many years of my life. And it has just spread like wildfire, to be honest with you. The league has prospered, the teams, the interest worldwide. It's just amazing where it's came, and great leadership, teams that have been really positive, and some players that obviously people love to watch play. So it's in good hands right now, and I think it will continue to grow and be even bigger worldwide.
And now we're seeing coaches from overseas. We're seeing a lot. Well, obviously, the players just keep coming, but let's talk about that international side to the NBA.
Well, repeat that last part again now.
Just a question about how the international side of the NBA has grown, because now we're seeing foreign-born coaches. We've already seen years and years of players, but how is this changing the NBA?
You would never think that we'd have players from Canada, which was reserved for ice hockey for so many years. And now we've got some great players from Canada coming in. And who ever thought that Australia would provide a number of really good basketball players? And if you look at the most valuable players in our league, where they came from, they're from Europe. Jokic, Giannis, and also another great player who has performed in this league for so long, Embiid. We have some incredible players. And to me, that's part of the growth of the league. When you see players from other countries come here, it creates an interest, and starting with little kids that they might know because they're young. And it'll continue to grow as they play longer and play like the MVPs that they have become. Luka Doncic, my goodness, incredible young player. And then you look at the players that are kind of American-born, they continue to get better. Every once in a while, I watch things on YouTube connected with basketball. And just to watch how these kids work out and how dedicated they are, there's a lot of money in this league. And for a kid not only to be able to live his dream to become a LeBron James or a Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, they have been doing this from the time they can walk. And it's amazing to me to see how these kids come in so polished, not with their, particularly with dribbling skills. And probably the last thing will come are the shooting skills. But it's just amazing how good these kids are. They play like a college schedule all over the world today, particularly when they're 12 to 16 years of age. And it's just amazing where they have come at such a young period of their lives, because with all this ability to watch every piece of information out there for them, it just makes for a great opportunity for these kids to get better. And if you remember how difficult it is, 440 kids play in the NBA. That's it. They're not going to have any more. And it's highly competitive. And that's what I think the growth of this league is going to become. And we'll see better and better players going forward.
What are your thoughts on Victor Wembanyama? I mean, obviously we saw him just in a little bit of time on the court. I can't think of a better coach than Greg Popovich to help him along. But what are your thoughts on him?
Well, a disclaimer first, okay? Because I'm still involved with the Clippers today. You're really not supposed to talk about other players, and I hope the NBA understands that. But he is one of those players that you feel like he's going to be an iconic player. If you watch him, he's highly skilled. He probably needs to be, more schooled in playing in the NBA. He can run. He can shoot three-point shots. I think his best skill is going to be blocking shots early in his career. But for people who haven't seen him play, he's pretty spectacular. But the other thing about him, if you put a microphone in front of him, he is fantastic. And to me, he's more than a basketball player. He is someone who gives the league another positive voice. His first game in the summer league, when I watched him play, he really did not play as up to his hype, and none of those kids do at that age. But he got on TV afterwards, and he was being interviewed, and he said, well, I didn't have my best game, but I think I'll do better going forward. I mean, he was so polished and so poised, and that's what the NBA needs, another voice to replace the ones who have been here for years. So to me, it's just like, from one generation to the next, and he's going to create a new player, also new fans.
That's what we talked about on the phone the other day.
Yes.
We talked about Antetokounmpo. We talked about Jokic. We talked about these voices that are just making the NBA look better and better every time they open their mouths.
Well, as I say, that's what's remarkable. I think we're getting kids now from Europe, a lot of kids in Europe. France at one time did not have a very good basketball program. They have a great basketball program. And again, I think it's because of the French players who've played over here successfully. And also, Victor is the next in line. We're going to see more kids coming from Africa, I think, because the NBA has done an incredible job. NBA and along with Masai Ujiri at Toronto, they've done an incredible job. They have brought resources to them that they didn't have. And if you're a solitary person and there's not very many people around, basketball, you can do everything that you need to do to develop your skills. And then comes playing against competition. And these kids are going to be like, when I was a kid, that's all I did was shoot basketball by myself, never dreaming that I would be able to play at the highest level in this league. And there's hundreds and thousands of kids all over the world who have that dream.
Do you think that Victor is worthy of the best prospect since LeBron? That's a lot of pressure on a player.
Oh, I think for sure. Just his sheer size is compelling to see him. I saw a picture of him with David Robinson and Tim Duncan, and he makes them look like they're really small. But his length, his reach, but he's got something special about him. I guess it would be like if you walked into a store and there were 3 pairs of shoes there, only one of them would catch your eye, and he is going to catch your eye. That's for sure. And I think being with the Spurs, Greg Popovich, and the people who have run this franchise successfully for years, they'll do a fantastic job with him, getting him ready to play at the highest level. And remember, he's, 19 years old? I mean, my goodness, he could play till these players play down to they're 35, 36, 37. And so it's going to be, I'm actually anxious to watch him grow. That's myself.
And yet our friend Shaquille O'Neal says, I would love to be on the court with him. He's like, we were talking about it recently. He said, I would love to get out there because the evolution of the big man has changed. Clearly, we're seeing a lot of big men who can do a lot more things than Shaquille could do, even though if I would tell him that to his face and he'd probably be annoyed, but that's okay. I can take it.
Well, Shaquille and I still keep in touch. And again, I love that guy. He's just a wonderful person, and he has time for everyone. And when you get to know him, the one thing you don't realize is just how darn big he is. Not in height, but he is like proportionate. I saw a picture of him with Wilt Chamberlain and, with Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell, I believe. And he just, if you look at him standing there together from a distance, you would say that Shaquille is so much taller than he's not. He's like an oak tree. You put him in the ground, he's not going to move. But I complimented the last time we text, and I complimented him. I said, "You're in better shape now than you ever were when you played." He's lost a lot of weight.
I told him the same thing. He was so mad at me. I said, "You look really good. You don't look as chunky as you did when you were playing." He's like, "I was never chunky. You saw me in the locker room and said you were chunky."
Well, you got to kid him. Have fun with him.
You have to say to his face, like, "Shaquille, you were a little chunky." You must have a good story or two from back in the day.
I have a lot of good ones about him.
That's why you're here.
I'm not sure they're susceptible to be on the air, but I do remember the first game that he was supposed to play in Los Angeles. He was ready to go and healthy, and we were going to play against the Utah Jazz. Okay, and Utah had really good teams. And I see him, and all of a sudden, I look up, and he's walking down there on the court, and he shoves or slaps Greg Ostertag. I said, "My gosh, what in the world is he doing?" And so the league suspended him for a game. I said, "Kill." I said, you're going to be a player that these fans are going to love in Los Angeles. And for the first game of the season at home, you're not going to play?" And he apologized like he always would do. There's other incidents he went into, and I think he was embarrassed by it. I really do. But Ostertag had said something about him that doesn't resonate very well with him. And I remember another time he gets kicked out of the game, and I go into the locker room to see how he was, and he had torn the doors off of the restroom areas that are protected. He said to me, "I'll be happy to pay for it." He said, "No, I want to pay for this." And I said, No, you can't pay for it. But how in the world can someone be this strong to rip these doors off? I mean, it was crazy. But he is a fun guy, a really fun guy. He kept it light and airy. And particularly in a grueling NBA season, 82 games. And, some kids come into the league, and it's really funny, Suzy. They come into the league, and their college team might lose 1 or 2 games. Hell, they might lose 5 straight games, and they're not used to it. So they have to learn how to participate in the league also. And he's I don't know if I've ever had a more favorite player around than him.
Taking into consideration the changes for the big men, and Shaq loves to do all sorts of like, where do I stand? Where do I fall with all of the big men in the history of the NBA? Where do you think he falls?
Well, I like to look at players in different eras, okay? And I think today, because the NBA has changed so much, the coaching has changed a lot because they have to deal with the three-point line. And now centers has to be much more versatile. But if you put him in his prime against other centers in his prime, he would be fantastic. He would absolutely be fantastic because he has such quick feet, and he was massive. And once he got his position, he was going to run right through you. But I've never tried to compare players at all. In different eras, there's always players that stand out than others. But the game changes fundamentally every year because the rule changes. Wilt Chamberlain, he used to dunk from the free throw line when he was in college. They cut that out. The lane, they made it wider. Now there's so many different 3-second calls they can make, which is a technical foul. And today, that's probably going to give a team another point, which you don't want to happen. So the league has changed, but he would do very well in era that we have seen so far, but he would himself have to make fundamental change. He'd have to learn to go out in the court and play people a little bit better because of the threat of three-point shooting. But I just think these great players can adjust to those things if they were still playing today.
Jerry West here on the Rich Eisen Show. Suzy Shuster in for Rich. What player do you believe is the least valued player in the NBA that you think should have more weight as we look back at the history of the NBA?
That is a fantastic question. No one's even asked me that. Being involved with the Clippers, people forget, because he's been injured so much, how great Kawhi Leonard really is. I mean, this guy's a man, and on both ends of the court. You watch film playing when he was really healthy all the time, and last year he had it going again really well last year, but because he has missed so many games with injuries, I think people forget about him. And, I looked at these teams and, people are starting to talk about, well, this team should be favored in this. The Clipper team, not because I work there, this team has two elite players on both ends of the court. Very few teams can say that. I'm talking about Kawhi and Paul George. But if any other players that I remember in yesteryear, John Stockton, I thought was the most underappreciated player in the league. But if you look now, oh boy, I think Bam Adebayo in Miami is really good. He plays every night. He competes every night. He gets numbers every night, and you can write him in. A coach loves a player that goes out there every night and he fills the stat sheet up. But even if he doesn't say score on some nights, he's still going to help them win because of his value to his team. And he doesn't get a lot of publicity, but I really think he is a terrific player myself.
Obviously, the caveat that you are with the Clippers, but is this the year for the Clippers? I know there's a lot of journeyman players who want to come to Los Angeles and join you guys up, but I have to ask that for poor TJ over there, who's long suffering.
Well, this Clipper team is really dangerous. I mean, we have players at every position, and I think I see a lot of free agents being signed today, and everyone raves about these free agents. Well, other people could have signed those people, and it's not a knock against them, but it's the fit you have within your team. It's like a puzzle. To me, you work a beautiful puzzle, and there's a big hole left in the middle of it because 2 or 3 pieces missing. If that piece is missing, it's not a puzzle. So coaches have to adapt to players getting hurt today, players not being able to play on certain nights. They have to adapt a lot. This Clipper team is a really good team, healthy. I mean, really good.
It's just how to keep them healthy. That's been the Achilles heel the whole time, correct?
Well, you come to California, get in the sun. That's supposed to make you healthy, right? Well, in this case, it hasn't. But no, we have some terrific players. We really do. And I don't like to overhype any team. To me, the Lakers have done a great job here in the last year and a half. 2 incredibly gifted players that will carry them, but it's just I look at again Denver. My goodness, a very dominant team, and probably the best player in the league is Jokic, and he's not the greatest athlete in the world. He makes teams win. He's easy to play with. He just has a way that makes it easier for a coach to play. But coming into any situation, Suzy, in any sport, and particularly basketball, you're playing 2 ends of the court. You're playing the offensive end and defensive end. And if they're not coordinated, you can't hide more than maybe one defensive player who just is a poor defender. And particularly late in the playoffs, those people are going to get exposed because our coaches are that good in this league.
Where does Jokic stand in terms of the greats of the game? Like, as you watch him, you've watched everybody, you've sized everybody up. Where is he?
He's just amazing, Suzy. He really is. You watch him, he doesn't really dunk like we see, and that's everyone in the league dunks today. But he just is one of those players that if you watch him play, he'll score 10 points, and he'll have he'll have 15 or 20 rebounds, 12 assists. But people, you have to watch him carefully around the basket. And some of the shots that he makes, you say, oh, he can't make those shots. He makes them regularly. And he's got the greatest pair of hands that any inside player. And people don't really talk about that, but I played with players that we had finally had nicknames for them, board hands. They couldn't catch. Their hand and eye coordination wasn't great. But he just got those incredible hands. And the thing that you love about him, he'll shoot a shot on one side, and everyone, he anticipates his own misses. And sometimes I think he misses deliberately because people get themselves out of position. He'll catch it on the other side and lay it in and get fouled. But as I say, he is like LeBron James, who plays here for Los Angeles. I have known him since he's 17 years old, and the brilliance of him as a player, but more importantly, his mind. His mind makes everyone better, and it also, these things rub off on your teammates. So if you got a great passing team, which is one of the things I think is prettiest about basketball, and it's more difficult to see today because so many players run, but you can be on 3-on-1 and a guy will run behind a three-point shot, pass up a layup to shoot a three-point shot. And again, this is the analytical approach that has gathered steam, particularly in basketball, but they don't tell you this nor this. And but again, these kind of players are rarities, and that's why they're so highly coveted. But more importantly, the people who play with them appreciate that one skill that we don't see enough of.
Suzy Shuster in for my husband, Rich Eisen, with the great Jerry West with me, which is such a treat. And the first caller we're getting, and by the way, you don't get to call in and ask Jerry questions very often, so this is pretty special here on Roku. But first caller, I'm holding my breath because Scott in Boston, you're on the phone. Scott, what do you got?
Hey, guys. Suzy, happy birthday yesterday. I didn't think when I was driving to work today I'd get to ask Jerry West a question, so I'm kind of excited about that. And hi to TJ and Chris.
Hold on one second, Scott. We're going to pipe you into the studio so that Jerry can hear you. So, but thanks for the happy birthday. And your kids were the first two people to call me, so that was a good thing. So you clearly
good.
Hold on, you got it. You got it, Philly?
Yes.
Hold on, we're going to bump you up. Hold on one second, Scott.
All right.
We're going to try to bump you up into studio so I don't have to repeat your question because I don't want to screw it up. We got it? I think we hear you. All right, Scotty, go for it. This is my brother Scott calling in from Boston.
Okay, great.
All right, what do you got, Scott?
Hey, Jerry, I'm a big fan of not only as you a basketball player, but all the things you've said about and help people with mental health, so I appreciate that. My guess is you're not a big Celtics fan, but I got a Celtics question for you. If you were the general manager of the Celtics, would you have signed Jaylen Brown to the contract they just signed him to? And I realize he's the highest paid player now in the NBA, and I realize it's more a function of how the contracts work, and he'll be bypassed shortly, but would you sign him to that deal? And also, if you were the coach of the Celtics, what would you ask Jaylen Brown to improve on so the Celtics can make that next step and win the championship? And the last part of it is, do you think he'll be better with a more traditional point guard now that Marcus Smart has left the Celtics?
All right, I'm going to break this down because those were three questions, and I'm going to ask them one at a time for you. Let's just first start off with Jaylen Brown. Your thoughts on him as a player. Obviously, he just got a lot of money. So what are your thoughts on Jaylen Brown with the Celtics?
Well, he's a terrific player, obviously, and I think the way the game is played today, he keeps improving, and I think that's the thing I like about him. In college, he didn't shoot the ball as well or as consistently as he does today, but I also think the way they play, they have an incredible 1-2 punch there in Boston, and he's just a player that keeps getting better, and players like that. I think every team has someone that they're drafted younger than they normally would be, and he just keeps getting better. And they've had a great franchise for years. They have wonderful people that work there, as do the other franchises in the league. But he's a terrific young player.
Do you feel that Jaylen Brown will improve with a different point guard in play? Obviously, Marcus Smart has been shipped out now.
Well, you don't know that. You really don't know that. I think the one thing is you expect players just from, and this is in all teams, you expect them, the younger they are, and obviously they get to be 25 or something, I think players can continue to get better, and particularly mentally. All players have do that, and particularly players that have enough physical gifts, who have the work ethic, which is something, if you ever lose that, you're not going to get better. And but there's a lot of teams that have players like that, and I think when you're his age and players his age, the height of a player today, probably 29 to 35. Where at one time at 35, you're going to retire. Not anymore because of all the physical things. Players take care of themselves because the enormity of the money in the league today. This is a profession today. It truly is.
What do you think as you look at a player like that, and when a player gets paid the way they did, and you look at development?
You know, speaking of money, I don't care what players make. I'd like to think that the players, and particularly in 1964, in an All-Star game in Boston Garden, the old Boston Garden, the players got together and said, we're not going to play this game unless you recognize us as someone that can bargain with you. And the owner of the Lakers then came into our locker room. Elgin Baylor and I were on the All-Star team. And here was his words. His words were the following: if you don't play, you're never going to play another basketball game again. And I loved the competition. I still love to watch people compete, particularly in basketball, because it's something that has always been in my blood. And I marvel at some of the things that the players do today. And from that moment on, and Oscar Robertson's involvement in a lawsuit, very much like Curt Flood in baseball, that has opened the gates for these young kids today. And I'm thrilled for them. Obviously, a lot of old timers wish there were other sources of revenues that would help them, because basically you had to have another job in the summer. You made nothing. And it was just the growth of the league. I'm thrilled for the players today, for the incoming players, but they must realize that only 440 of them are going to be involved at the NBA, and really a chance at this piece of the pie. It's a profession today. It's not just something that people did because they like to compete.
God, you must be so. You've been covering and been such an integral part of the NBA. You're the logo, after all. And as you see the game change, I know you don't like to say that you're the logo, but I know because you're a very humble guy. But as you see the game change, what's it like for you to watch these players getting the money that they get, thinking about how you guys played and how you guys put in the time and effort versus what these guys get, even unproven at this point?
Well, I think the biggest thing, Suzy, it really wasn't the money, because again, you played for a different reason. You played because you love to compete, and from the time, almost all these kids playing today are the same thing. They started playing very young, and obviously some of them separate themselves because of the greatness, their unique skills. But I never really thought about the money, because an owner would come to you and he'd say, okay, we're offering you a 2-year deal, and you had no agents, no one to represent you, and they wouldn't even talk to an agent or somebody, even a lawyer. They wouldn't even talk to them, and it's take it or leave it. It got to the point where, it was very frustrating to have to do that, because you really felt they were being deceptive. And coming from where I came from in West Virginia, I was so naive. It was a joke. But today now, the thing I look at today, I marvel at all the medical treatments and how they measure where an athlete is today physically as compared to yesteryear. That, to me, to walk away from the game with no, bad knees or whatever injuries they had, I'm fortunate, at 85 years of age, I don't have any of those problems, and I had a lot of stuff that happened to me. But again, I knock on wood all the time. I'm pretty darn healthy for my age.
Chris, what do you have?
Mr. West, there's a lot of debate on social media and everything about what era was the best era of basketball. The 90s players seem to think it was their era. Today's players, there's so much talent now. What era do you think was the best?
Yeah, what was the best era of basketball, in your opinion?
Oh my gosh! I think I believe in 1988, and I'm not sure. I think the Lakers won the championship when I was there. The three-point line had came into being. I don't think we shot 300 three-point shots all year long, but those teams in the 80s were the best teams I have ever seen, even better than the teams playing today. They had size. They had, oh my gosh, they had all-stars at every position. But you have to remember one thing. The league was now expanding, and so there were less players that could play in the league, and now there's more players that play in the league. And with the growth of the league, you keep seeing people clamoring for, an expansion franchise. And I think the NBA, I have, our commissioner has done an unbelievable job, and I'm talking about Adam Silver. He's done an unbelievable job growing this league. His job was so different than David Stern's, and he's grown this league now, and there's room for other teams because there's so many players that are worthy of playing in the NBA. But as I say, this game will not stop growing. I just feel that as I say, in '88 when we won that, coaches didn't have to adjust to the three-point line, and that has in the last number of years. And I don't know what years those were. But now you see everyone wanting to shoot a three-point shot. And the other thing I think it does, it kind of opens up an area for smaller players to be able to play in the league because cleverness with the ball, the ability to shoot three-point shots, I think it's also let smaller players play. And there's a bunch of people out there that don't grow to 6'5", to 6'9" or 6'10". There's a bunch of kids. So that's a good thing about it. But the coaches have changed. We've got some incredible coaches in this league. And hats off to them because they have learned how to use this three-point line to their advantage.
How many three-pointers would you have made with a line?
Well, if you shoot enough, you're going to make some. And I didn't mind shooting the ball.
No, you did not. TJ, you have a question, but make it very loud.
Very loud. So, Mr. Jerry, we're in sports. We're very.
TJ's got a question for you.
In sports, we're very big on comparisons. We always like to compare the players from our past to the players of our present. Which modern day players do you see that remind you of yourself, of a young Jerry West? Who out there in the league today do you look at and go, okay, I can see myself in him?
Yeah, who do you see in the modern day NBA that reminds you of you?
God forbid anyone did. I was a crazy competitor. I mean, I used to worry about the games all day long. And I think we have so many of those kids in the league, so many of them today in the league. But I think looking back, and it's uncomfortable to really talk about, how I played in those times. And obviously I was a player that got a lot of attention. I think I made 11 all-pro teams in my career, and the writers didn't vote for it, and the players. And so it was more meaningful, I think, than it is today. But I probably, when I came into the league, was a better defensive player than I was an offensive player. And that was really a strength that I like to see in players. And I think I mentioned earlier, I mentioned two players that play for the Clippers, and I see all these other teams play. But Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, they play both ends of the court. And that's why I sort of admire them maybe more than most might, even though they've not been healthy here recently. I just like players that are well-rounded, that can play both ends of the court, and they like to do it. You have to like to do that. Coaches can't keep forcing you to do it. You see players that are poor defenders, and you say, my goodness, this player is so athletic. Why can't he play the other end of the court? And there's a knack to doing that. I told Kareem Abdul-Jabbar one time, I said, Kareem, if you'd really work hard, and after the end of the season, I said to him, if you really worked hard, you might accomplish things that you can't even believe. After the season, I apologized to him. He made it look so easy because he didn't waste steps. And you see some players, you watch some really great players, unless they're running, their effort is just moving their body subtly to the right places. And within the scheme of a defensive scheme that the coach might put out there for them, they just play the game easier. They have fewer wasted steps in a game, and they accomplish more.
Well, then I have to ask you, how did he take that criticism when you said that to him?
He and I are close. He's one of the players that, I don't know, I always liked him. And he's different. He's really studious. He's incredibly bright. And he and I like to read. And it came because of reading. He would, I'd hear him talk about certain things. But I met him when he was in high school. And I think what happened, I read about him in the paper. And when I was playing, we practiced at the gym, and I went over and had a conversation with him. And that's, little did I know he was going to get to where he was going to get. And I had an opportunity to coach him. He was a consummate professional, consummate. And I admired everything he did. And particularly after being around him, he was one of those players that just didn't waste steps. And it was just an economical way for him to save energy.
Jerry, I'm going to ask you to come on every time I do the show. I want to thank you so much for your time. It means so much to us.
Suzy, I really appreciate it. And obviously, it's nice to see you. And,
you too.
And I do have an opportunity to watch you and Rich sometimes when I'm working out. And I wish you continued good luck.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.